The Boston Marathon bombings, selective empathy, and state worship. The writer from antiwar.com, or the blog, says, I've held back on writing something about the Boston Marathon bombings because there is little to comment on about the actual incident before something is known about the perpetrators, but here's a few reflections on the public reaction to the attack. Selective empathy, they call it. As many people have already pointed out, the collective empathy that Americans feel for victims of similar attacks when they are carried out by our own government is virtually zero compared to what is being felt now for people of Boston. It was just here confirmed through hard investigative journalism last week that large portions of the 3,000 to 4,000 people killed in the drone war have been unidentified individuals without any connection to any terrorist or insurgent group in the conflict with the U.S. For years, there have been indisputable reports of massive civilian casualties in drone bombings in Pakistan, Yemen, and beyond. It says, how different are the images produced by such attacks? Shattered bodies, dismembered limbs, severed arteries, frantic aid givers, and terrified survivors. How different from the moving images of the tragedy in Boston now being broadcasted and rebroadcasted on TV stations around the globe, asked Barry Lando. Something that I covered in yesterday's video. Within hours of the marathon bombings, more than 75 people were killed in a bombing in Iraq. The perpetrators were part of a group of al-Qaeda in Iraq, a group that only exists as a result of the illegal U.S. war and invasion that got hundreds of thousands of people killed. So it says here, but most Americans have been unconcerned. The most important thing to glean from this discrepancy in empathy for senseless acts of violence inflicted on our own countrymen, as compared with the senseless acts of violence carried out by our own countrymen on equally innocent people abroad, was articulated brilliantly by Glenn Greenwald today. Whatever sadness you feel for yesterday's victims, the same level of sadness is warranted for the innocent people whose lives are ended by American bombs. It says, however profound a loss you recognize the parents and family members of these victims to have suffered, that's the same loss experienced by victims of U.S. violence. Second point being made is tragedy elicits state worship. Whenever there's a horrible attack like this one, Americans invariably morph their feelings of anger and sadness into overt expressions of state worship, or some people call it patriotism. It seems almost instinctual. Everybody starts proclaiming their love for USA, their pride and admiration for the police, military, and elected officials. States are violent institutions by their very nature, but they thrive on what is called stability, because stability means people aren't unsatisfied and disillusioned and are therefore less likely to question the authority of the government and cause trouble. Radio scans show Boston police medic heroics. It says the voices recorded on the internet remain unidentified, but they testified to the real-time heroics that saved lives and created order out of chaos. 6 heroes who emerged from the Boston Marathon tragedy. Against the backdrop of a sickening attack, we saw many examples of humanity at its best. Looking for one good man, Boston patient searches for her survivor. A patient has a message for the man who picked her up and carried her to safety, saying thank you. So it goes on and says that she would like to relay her gratitude to the Good Samaritan. It says here that the patient remembers her heroes, Sergeant Tyler, a former Marine who may have been in uniform. Hero's tragic life led him to iconic marathon photo. Said his son was killed in Iraq, other son committed suicide. Talking about how he ran off to help injured victims. But he was handing out American flags. I mean, people should make the connection, because right away they think about al-Qaeda and dirty Muslims and sand niggers, as they call them. I mean, people, this is the way they talk in America, a lot of them. And the way they see it is, you know, oh, it's these Saudis, it's whatever, you know, and just another 9/11. And it's like, it's crazy, because with that mentality you would think, okay, well, why are these people so scared of us? And if you go into the story, like we covered in the beginning, it talks about how these people in Yemen and in Pakistan are terrified. They're terrified. You know, weddings are weddings. They can't have weddings without having to worry about getting drone striked. So we're inflicting a lot of horror around the world, and there's going to be some blowback for this. Yet this guy, no matter what, whose son was killed in Iraq, he's, I guess, a peace activist, anti-war activist, whatever you want to call him, and handing out American flags. So, you know, so they put in there soaked with blood. So they end up spinning this into a pro-statist view. Again, it's just kind of sickening to me. But hero of Superstorm Sandy dies in surfing accident. So you better be careful if you're a hero, because heroes just up and die right after, right? Or other things happen. Connecticut teachers were heroes in the face of death. So the teachers, the military, the police, the first responders, right? They can't ever prevent anything, but they can be there to be heroes when they're doing their job. So it says here, I mean, I'm not trying to be an insensitive prick here. It's just, you know, these, they even said in the article, the 6 heroes, you go in there, links will be posted, that the runners themselves were heroes. I mean, granted, I have family members that run marathons. It's not an easy thing to do, and I commend them for doing that. But I don't see if, it's like saying people at the Columbine, the students that were massacred by this black op, psyop, were heroes. Victims, I mean, not going to be the heroes. But it makes sense. Again, psychological warfare. It tells the people, the masses, that, oh, if you're a victim, you're a hero. You want to be a hero. Everyone wants to be a hero, right? You want to be the authorities. Well, all you have to do is be a victim. That's why I said before that a lot of times these firemen and police actually have victim mentalities. They're afraid of death. So they're always scrambling to try to prevent it from happening. But you lose your freedoms in the process, so. Sandy Hook families at Boston Marathon traumatized again. That's right. So several parents in the Sandy Hook, Connecticut ran in the Boston Marathon as a guest of honor and a way for Boston to help those families heal from December's massacre of children. Instead, the 6 Sandy Hook families found themselves again besieged by sirens, ambulances, and shocking carnage. So there you go. Traumatized again. Newtown family fires. Sandy Hook survivors now homeless. That's right. So a Newtown family with children who survived the mass shooting 3 months ago are homeless after a fire burned down their house. So I guess, you know, this is some real sick stuff that happens here. Global government news. This is my website, News for the North American Union and Beyond. You can go in there. Was the Boston Marathon bombing another false flag op? I hate using that phrase, but I don't know what else to call it. Psychological operation, maybe? But anyways, you can go in there and check it out. It's up and running, so. All right, next up we have the Boston murders. This morning I saw a little of Fox and Friends, 3 hearts with but 1 IQ. The woman was calling the Boston murderer a coward. Says America does not do such things, she yelled. Of course, the U.S. bombs people, including civilians, hundreds of times a day with drones run by brave guys in Nevada basements. But about 50 innocents are murdered for every alleged terrorist. Earlier this month, 11 boys were killed in Pakistan by a drone, but they don't count. They're gooks, ragheads, the Untermenschen, sand niggers, and Muslims. This is from the Lou Rockwell blog. Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood condemns Boston Marathon bombings and deems them sinful. Well, Muslim Brotherhood doesn't speak for all Muslims. They're a Western proxy. Pro-Taliban militants deny involvement in Boston twin bombings. So it says here that the militants in Pakistan have denied all involvement regarding bombings at Boston Marathon, because they probably couldn't even carry it out if they wanted to, but they're controlled. They're not completely controlled, but they are, again, a Western proxy. I mean, they're fighting to keep the imperialists out of their country, but at the same time, they're coordinating with their enemies, which was the occupiers. So first, the narrative was that it's they have a Saudi, that possibly the person that was responsible for doing it, but like I said, they usually turn him loose, kick him loose, say, oh, no, that's not nobody, just like Sandy Hook, right? Let the first person that they apprehend, like Aurora, shoot him, they get let go. Nobody, that's never pursued. Injured Saudi is a witness, not a suspect in Boston bombing. U.S. law enforcement officials said Tuesday that a Saudi national injured in the Boston Marathon bombing is regarded as a witness, not a suspect. Boston Marathon bombs. Al-Qaeda's Inspire magazine taught pressure cooker bomb making techniques. A recipe for how to make pressure cooker bombs, which investigators say were used in the Boston Marathon attack, most notoriously published in Al-Qaeda magazine. But yeah, this comes from like a similar site. This is coming from Homeland Security, and these are the same type memos that are put out, basically calling libertarians, Ron Paul supporters as terrorists, veterans, gun owners. So I mean, this is like stuff out of like a comic book or something. Pressure cooker bombs used in past by militants. So it says here they're used in past by militants. One of them was Yemen. You'll see that in these stories coming out, Yemen. So keep an eye on that, tying it back to Yemen, as one commenter said. Excited, I just ordered my first pressure cooker, American Preppers Network. So could this be a tie, again, to preppers, to survivalists? Well, I don't know. But Doomsday Prepper raided by FBI for criticizing Obama. This was December 6th of last year. Pennsylvania survivalist arrested in Camden County on weapons charges. So this is February 15th, 2013. Police nab long sought Utah mountain man survivalist suspected in cabin break-ins. This is from April 2013. Maine hermit living in wild for 27 years is arrested. Why are they going after all these people all of a sudden? April 10th, 2013. Speaking of hermits, one person, right? One guy could have pulled off Boston bombing, says an expert. FBI takes lead on investigation. So they like to do this like a Norway shooting, Breivik, you know? They like to pin it on one person. When you know damn sure there's more than one, usually someone that's working off the books that's, quote, died in Iraq or something as a soldier. So... But moving on here, experts blame right-wing terrorists. This is from April 16th. The fatal explosions in Boston have hints of a right-wing terrorist attack rather than al-Qaeda-inspired extremism, according to one of the world's leading experts on counterterrorism. So he's former UN coordinator and served in the MI5, MI6. So I think that's all I have to really say about that. Next up, we have Obama insider attempts to link Boston bombing to tax day. Former Obama advisor David Axelrod has joined the other mainstream media mouthpieces in insinuating that the horrific Boston marathon bombing may have been linked to tax day. So he said the term terror attack, the word has been taken on different meanings since 9/11. So it says he used those words and it means something very different in people's minds. It says here, we really don't know who did this. It was tax day. So it says when someone can be pro, you know, you just don't know. So this is one of the arguments that I was making too, that they would tie this to tax day and then tie it to libertarians. Massachusetts congressman, look at the symbols that were attacked in Boston. So I thought it was kind of odd too. It was right in front of all the flags. I pointed out to somebody and just went right over their head. So he says here, from Homeland Security perspective, look at the symbols because that's where terrorists try to attack. That's the targets. So it's that kind of symbol that terrorists would look at. And also, it's tax day. It's April 15th. And if it's a domestic terrorist that hates the government and wants to rebel, that's a symbol as well. Chinese student in coma after Boston Marathon bombing. So was this one of the symbols too, aimed at China? Boston Marathon bombs packed with gunpowder and shrapnel. Pressure cooker stuffed with gunpowder and shrapnel caused at least one of the blasts at the Boston Marathon that killed 3 people and injured 176 others. Bombs frequent in U.S. says 172 IED incidents in last 6 months. The mainstream media usually does. They buy everything that happens, so they're not skeptical. See, if you're skeptical, you're now a conspiracy theorist, and that's what I'm going to be going into today, is showing how they are insulting people's intelligence. It says here that it's the worst attack on U.S. soil since September 11, 2001, right? So then they're talking about these bombs frequent in the U.S. and IEDs. It says here that they were the deadliest bombing in Boston in the United States since, 1995. That's Oklahoma City bombing, so another black op, right? Felony powder amounts in California over 20 pounds of smokeless gunpowder or more than 1 pound of black powder. Even if intended for using in sporting firearms, California provides felony penalties for possessing more than stated amounts of gunpowder without special permits. So I've mentioned this before about how they probably won't just ban guns all outright. They'll just make them very hard to get. Also, they'll make ammunition very scarce, and this could be one thing for reloaders. A commenter was mentioning something about this could be another way to grab at gunpowder, regulate that even more, which they're probably right. 3D printing pioneer wants government to restrict gunpowder, not printable guns. This is from February 19th of this year. But it goes on here and it says that according to the leading 3D printing researcher, the only way to prevent printed guns from shooting, a new loophole in the law may be to control the gunpowder you need to fire them. I do think, like Bitcoin that just crashed, it was too wild and too free. I saw one article and the next day it crashed. Something that may actually come from the bottom down, who knows? But this 3D printing that can print out guns, that could be another, that could be a problem because it's not going through the military-industrial complex. It's not going through the arms industry that NRA represents. Perhaps the only way forward is if we choose to try and control this, is to control the gunpowder, not the actual device. So, Boston police retract report of third explosions. Commenter was asked about this. Says here that they initially thought there was a third explosion, but actually the JFK library was set on fire. Thank you.